Okay, everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to a normal 494 lecture. Good to see all of you in person and all of you who are watching online and via the recording. Good day to you as well. If you look at where we are right in the middle of our first kind of major, actually our second major P3 technical deliverable, okay? You should have all gotten your feedback, your video feedback from the instructional team late last night. I think we published the grades and feedback at, I think 11 p.m. or so. We're going to try and keep that cadence. What's going to happen is that as your games get bigger and there's more to talk about, we'll go from spending 10 minutes per game to 20 to 30. And at that point, you start to get your feedback at like 1 or 2 a.m. But hopefully it's useful to you. I encourage you, even if you get a grade that comes in and it's not what you wanted it to be, I encourage you to look at that grade, watch the video feedback so you can get an explanation of why that occurred. And again, we will often offer you recommendations for directions we think you might want to consider. But these are your games, okay? Don't let us design your game for you, okay? This is your capstone. This is your MDE. This is your chance to go make something weird. But you do need to solve the problems that we identify in your games, okay? You can choose how you do so. All right, so today, now that we have kind of gotten into this weekly cadence of playtests on Monday and feedback coming late Tuesday, it makes sense to kind of finish up our talk on playtesting. If you remember, at our last normal lecture, I showed you one of my 494 projects, actually. And we showed you a tool that allowed us to kind of collect data, see where people were moving, where they were going, and that allowed us to dramatically iterate our game and make things quite a bit better. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. We're also going to talk about a topic that everyone loves. We're going to talk about team dynamics and politics in general, okay? What is that topic doing in a capstone computer science course? Well, now that you are on teams, how you decide to dole out and manage the power that all of you have is going to have a huge impact on your ability to be successful, okay? In this course, you really want your team to have good dynamics, good vibes, as they're sometimes colloquially called. And there are things you can do to keep your relationships very effective, to keep your team running smoothly. And there are also things you can do accidentally that will grind your team and your efforts to a halt, create infighting, create creative struggles. And we want to make sure that you avoid those things on this P3 if you can, okay? Anyway, those are the things we're going to be talking about today. Before we really get to that, though, it is time for me to shill some courses because backpacking has arrived, okay? Very exciting time. I remember in undergraduate, even in graduate school, there was this question of like, oh, there are all these cool courses I want to take. Are they going to fill up? Am I going to be able to get into them? Is my appointment going to arrive in time? And so I want to make sure you know what your options are. One thing about most of my courses is that in general, if it starts to get full, we will expand the cap to try and get everyone in. Okay, I haven't had to flat out deny people any of my courses for like 5 years or so. Okay, and usually we have drops as well. Another interesting thing is that I meet a lot of students who graduate without knowing what courses are available to them. They learn about some of my courses after they've just filed for graduation, and they're like, oh, dang, if I wasn't graduating, I totally would have taken that. And it's like, kid, the course has been around every semester for the last, 10 years. Like, you just didn't know about it? So anyway, I appreciate your patience as I shill these courses. I just want to make sure you know what's available to you. EECS 298 is the big new one. Stephanie O'Malley over in the corner, who runs this entire fantastic facility and a lot of the teams here and research here, has helped me put this course together. She is an artist who has worked on some super cool games in the industry, and she's been kind of teaching me up so that I can teach you up. In any case, this course is all about this idea that in EECS 494, our games are often very well designed at the showcase. They are well built internally. They're easy to scale. The code base is in relatively good shape for a student game. The problem that we always run into is that our projects, they don't look that great, right? They don't leap off the page. They don't really have charismatic and charming characters. That's something that Wolverine Soft Studio has had a huge problem with as well. We just don't know how to use Blender around here. We don't know how to animate things. We don't know how to 3D model things. And that has to change. It's super important, not just for artistic and creative work, but also for engineering work. Okay, if you want to be able to 3D print a prototype, you'd better be a good 3D modeler. Okay, there are a lot of opportunities out there that say, hey, we want someone who knows Unity or Unreal Engine and who also can 3D model things to create, for instance, a visualization of a nuclear reactor. We don't want you to just go out and grab something off Sketchfab or the asset store. We want to create our own customizations, okay? We want something that's really authentic to our local facility. And so if you don't have a 3D modeling ability, then that's not going to be an opportunity you're going to get, okay? And so anyway, that's what this course is all about. And I've been shilling it as hard as I can. You might see announcements and email blasts and stuff like that. But basically, you're going to have a gigantic portfolio at the end of this course of 20-minute models, and you're going to get better and better at all of this. And in fact, I'm not that good at it. I'll never be that good at it. But just this morning, I made a little iPhone in about 5 minutes, and it's not that great. Look at my Apple logo. Is that sick or what? I'm not a 2D artist, you can tell. But it was a shockingly powerful feeling to realize that if I want my own iPhone, I can make it in about 5 minutes. And it won't look great if you look closely. But in most games, this is about how big this object is ever going to be. Okay? And it actually looks okay, like passable. Stephanie gave me a C+ for the model, which is a passing grade. And so, the amazing thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to teach this course, but then my students will very quickly exceed my abilities. I've got an excuse. It's okay. I'm an engineer, all right? But I can't wait for that. Like, some of the people in this course who take this course are going to become fantastic artists. They will also be fantastic engineers. And that, when you have someone who is very good at multiple disciplines, that is when you get explosive, incredible results. Okay, Toby Fox goes and makes Undertale, and by trade, he is a musician. He's a very good one, okay, a very strong musician. But you know what's shocking and why Undertale worked? He was an expert-level musician. He was a pretty goodish programmer. He wasn't an amazing programmer, but he was good enough at programming. He was also a strong writer. And so when you combine all of these disciplines together he's also a decent pixel artist, not an amazing one, but a decent one. When you take all those disciplines together and put it into one person, you get someone who can make the next multi-million-dollar indie game, okay? And so, yeah, that's what I want for all of you, okay? And so I think this is a step toward that. So I'm really, really excited. Anyway, let's keep going. This is all to say, consider the course if you can. I don't think it's going to be nearly as heavy as 494. You should be able to pair it with another tough course and it'll be all right. And if you know anyone who's like interested in this stuff or always wanted to learn Blender, yeah, let them know about the course. It's open to anyone. We're going to try and scale this thing as much as we can. The really good Stamps animation courses that we currently have, they're limited by their capacity, right? 18 people is about all they take per semester. I want this course to have 200 people, okay? That would be amazing. Grading would be a huge pain, like it always is, but we'll figure it out. And at the very end of the course, you will have a online multiplayer Unity game that kind of looks a bit like this, with your own characters, your own environments, your own narrative, your own NPCs, your own collectibles. You get online multiplayer by default. Hello, someone was already playing? That's awesome. I wonder if this person I'm playing with, bye-bye, knows the game is multiplayer. She's going to respawn right down there. Let's go say hi. Anyway, you're going to have your own characters and all that good stuff as well, okay? And more people coming in, and yeah, you can switch characters and all that, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I think if Wolverine Soft Studio put out games that had cool characters like this, reacting dynamically to the environment, I think we'd have a lot more commercial success as a student-run studio. A lot more awards won and stuff like that. Anyway, that's what I want for you, and that's why we're going to go do this course. Okay, but anyway, 440, Extended Reality for Social Impact. This is another capstone. You can't take it next semester because it's moved to winters only, okay? It's held right in here. You get to use all these wonderful headsets, $1,500 each, these MetaQuest Pros. And you get to learn how to make virtual reality and augmented reality apps. And it's the only course on campus I know of that also teaches Unreal Engine, okay? And so if you want to learn Unreal Engine, which is a super powerful engine, very common in AAA, then that's a course you might want to consider taking a year from now, okay? Game engine architecture will also only be available in winters, okay? So that's another good one. If you need an upper-level CS, that's a great one to take. Build your own game engine from scratch. The engine you end up making shares a ton of similarities with Unity. So if you ever wondered, how does this cool engine do all of its thing under the hood? You build Unity. You build a miniature version of Unity, and that's the entire course, okay? So pretty good time. All right, so some other fun announcements. A breakout clone in your Google Calendar. Kind of an interesting little game. This takes your Google Calendar and it renders it out. It kind of chops it up and turns all these little events into game objects where you can go in and you can actually destroy them, okay? If you are feeling frustrated with your busy schedule, then this is maybe a way to release some of that that angst, okay? Oh, and it seems that, yeah, after the game ends, you can have it automatically decline all the events that you have destroyed, okay? So that's kind of interesting. I'm glad that it gives you the option at the end, whether you actually want to do that. But there you go. If you are interested in joining the EECS 494 instructional staff or the instructional staff for any of your courses, an email recently went out, I think, to the undergrad population from the CS department with the IA and grading application form. Okay, so you can go in and fill that out and let courses know about your interest, and then usually I think over the next few weeks, the course staff usually reaches out and says, hey, we think you're a good fit. Are you interested? And all that stuff, okay? So we certainly appreciate the staff that signs up to help us teach 494 and all these other courses. It's the only reason I can teach so many courses is because I've got fantastic staff in all of them. So if you're interested in any of that, please let me know. Send me an email or fill out the form or both. I think that undergrad graders are getting paid something like $15 an hour. I think undergrad IAs are getting paid like $25 or $26 an hour. So the pay is really good, actually. And you can also learn a lot. You can also often get a letter of recommendation from your professor if you're on their team. It'll be a little bit stronger if you want to go to grad school. Okay, question?
Just like correction, I don't think IA applications are out.
Oh, they're not out? Oh, I think they're coming very soon. Very soon. Yeah, keep an eye out for that if they're not out yet. On the topic of 3D art, this is actually not related. This is something I just talk about every semester. I want to show you a very cool, very common process when it comes to creating a 3D character in a game. Have you ever heard of technical 2D art? Well, what this is it's often an image in which the character is rendered from multiple directions. And the goal here for the artist is to try and create an image that is as consistent as possible. It is art that's very specifically meant to inform people about the character and their dimensions, their geometry, right, their style. And so a 3D artist can actually take something like this that a 2D artist has produced and can actually create geometry out of it that almost perfectly resembles the actual character itself. So this is a character named Sandy, and she appears in a couple of my indie games. Her geometry, I don't know if this is going to come through. Oh, it's no longer available, sad. Do any of these come through? No, I'm going to have to go fix these. But you can see her here. We're switching to her character right there, okay? It's a little bit scuffed, right? But you can see the model that the 3D artist created was very true to form. The game has kind of a pixel filter on it, kind of a lo-fi filter. The animations are a bit scuffed, right? But it looks pretty good, pretty much like her 2D counterpart. Now, one interesting problem in 3D, especially with characters, is the topic of weight painting. Have any of you heard of that? So this character right now, okay, this character has a bunch of things in her model. There's a bunch of geometry, right? All the vertices, all the faces and edges that make up her actual volume. But then there's a skeleton. There are materials that give color and texture to her face, to her attire, stuff like that. But she also has an armature inside of that geometry, a skeleton, okay? That armature is basically actually you can see it, okay? When you see the EECS298.com, when you see some of our GIFs in here, you can see an example in armature. So wireframe of Daisy, geometry, material, and now armature, okay? This is a very simple bone rig that allows you to easily manipulate all the vertices and geometry of certain things like an arm or a leg or a face or something like that. In any case, let's see here. Where did the thing go? There we go. I want you to watch Sandy's face. Watch what happens to her face. Watch closely as she runs down this hallway, okay? Her face is going to do something that makes it look very weird, all right, and not great. Okay, here we go. Does her face look a little bit strange to you, like something was slightly off there? What's happening, I'll see if I can capture it. Look at this shot right here. Her chin is aimed toward the door, whereas the top half of her face is kind of returning to facing straight forward, okay? Another example is coming up. You see this? Her face, her skull is seemingly being split in two here because the top of her head is looking toward the door over here, and her chin is looking toward it, but not as much, okay? This has the effect that her skull looks like it isn't rigid. It's made out of putty. And the reason this is a problem, I think I can show it to you right here, is that, number one, it looks terrible, okay? Here are Sandy's actual bones, her underlying armature, and you can then see her geometry on top of those bones. Right here, we have a neck bone, right? The neck bone basically controls and manipulates a bunch of geometry in this area around her neck, but it also affects a little bit of geometry around her chin, okay? We also have a face bone that takes care of most of her head, but also some of her neck and chin. And these bones aren't really working in sync. One bone can be twisted to make her look at a nearby door, but the face bone is going to twist, but not as much. And so the result here is that everything looks quite nasty and her skull doesn't look rigid anymore. Well, what you have to do to fix this is you have to go in, right? You have to go in and you have to repaint these vertices so that anything that's part of her hair or her face, her skull, is going to be exclusively controlled by this bone that's entirely in her face, okay? And then the neck bone will just kind of control the neck stuff down here. Right now, it's all blended together, and as a result, getting her to look at something causes her face to morph and seemingly shatter, like her skull's made of putty, okay? You have to go in and you have to fix it. Here's what it looks like when you correct this. So she's going to be running down here, and her skull is going to look much more natural, okay? The top part of her head is always in sync with her chin. Okay, and as a result, it just looks like a human being. Doesn't that look fantastic? That's kind of a cool pose, too, cool screenshot. Anyway, yeah, it looks perfectly normal. This is the kind of stuff that we don't know how to do on this campus. Stephanie knows how to do it, and her students know how to do it, but my students just don't know how to do this. Okay, so we get really weird-looking games sometimes, and things just don't look as good as they could. All right, this is all to say that when it comes to the world of 3D art and animation, it is shockingly technical, okay, in how it all works, which is why we can have a art course in a computer science department, okay? It is the world of art that has clashed with the world of software, okay? And so we get a very interesting, diverse course out of that. Okay, I think that's all I want to show you for now. A couple notes, P3 Milestone has released as well as P3 Research, okay? So make sure that you're working on this research essay. This research essay is going to require you to make and play quite a few games. This template right here, in fact, it requires you to come up with 8 different games that you want to play. And you compare game number 1 to game number 2, game number 3 to 4, 5 to 6, and 7 to 8. Sounds like a lot, and if it's only one person doing this assignment, it is a lot. But you now have a team of 4 to 5 people. Split that up, and you only have to play 2 games. And each one of you only have to write 1 of these paragraphs, okay? And so, hopefully that won't be too bad. I don't expect it will be. P3 Milestone is kind of an interesting assignment. On this first assignment, the grade was super high, the average, okay? Part of that is that the criteria were just very simple, very easy to deal with. On P3 Milestone, this is the first assignment where you will be judged on your novelty, your interesting decisions, your memorable moments, okay? We talked about that, dedicated an entire lecture to that earlier in the course. Your guidance, okay? Your guidance is also lumped in with your technical soundness. So if you've got a buggy game, you'll lose points on this criteria. If you have a game that struggles to teach the player elegantly, then you will struggle on this criteria. Okay? We want to see that you are moving forward and enhancing many different aspects of your game week to week. So there's an iteration criteria, okay? And there's also a juice and theming criteria as well. We do want you to be putting a lot of effort in making your game juicy and thematically cohesive and consistent, all right? We just had our talk on theming. If you choose a very good, cohesive, and well-fitting theme, then everything in your life as a game designer becomes vastly easier, okay? And people might just want to play your game because you've got a great theme. It's very charming. It's very cohesive. So put some effort into that, okay? Definitely don't neglect it. I know we're all engineers. We want to go program something. But thinking about art style, thinking about our characters, thinking about all of that, context, our setting, our backgrounds, our audio is really, really, really useful, okay? Okay, does anyone have any questions on anything? Comments? All right, well, let's get back into it. Let's talk again about playtesting. Okay, we did our first major playtest for P3 on Monday, but the quality of the playtest you run, the quality of the feedback you give as a playtester can have dramatic results when it comes to deciding what you want to change, to deciding, how good is your final game going to be. So we talked to you about this idea that playtesting Q&A is a very, very important business. Large corporations like Microsoft, working on Halo and other games like that, EA, right? Activision, all of these companies will have dedicated teams just for the purpose of playtesting and Q&A. Companies like Nintendo that are very, very international will have entire teams that do that, but they also handle translation. There's a famous team at Nintendo called the Nintendo Treehouse that does a bunch of Q&A, okay? But they also make sure that a game designed and made for the Japanese audience will also translate and make sense and be effective in Western audiences, for instance, okay? Last time, I showed you the initial version of my 494 P3 map back in the day. It's rough, okay? It's not very interesting. The environment here, the actual play space, the arena, did nothing for the game. Players, as we can see from this data, would just walk out of the starting room and start running in circles, okay? That does not suggest they were making interesting decisions. That does not suggest that the gameplay had an ebb and a flow to it, okay? It was just constant running around in a circle and shooting at enemies, and it wasn't that great. We detected this being a problem thanks to our playtesting approach, thanks to our data collection, and we designed a new map that had players engaging with each other, talking with each other, making interesting decisions, consequential ones, about should we split up or not? Should we regather? Where should we go? Okay, a map that allowed you to explore and find things that were useful to you. And as a result, things got much better, and the final version of the game was much more successful, okay? This process, this playtesting process, is an extremely important part of our iterative design process. In fact, it deals with these two quadrants, analysis and testing. And this is what allows us to figure out what we want to change in our design and keep us improving, okay? So here are a couple fun anecdotes from industry, right? On The Sims 4, we had a really interesting bug, okay? A very interesting bug that actually made headlines. It's in this image. Can you see it? I'll zoom in for you. Can you see the bug now? Question, is this a catastrophic bug? The bug is this. Sometimes, on rare occasion, when a sim would go to eat something, their fork wouldn't be transformed properly. It wouldn't be parented properly. It would be in this kind of default position and orientation, and it would look like the fork is going through your hand, okay? The sim could still eat, all right? And if you're not looking closely, it wasn't a big deal, all right? So when The Sims 4 launched, we had a lot of good news, okay? Good news comes through. The chance of the bug is very small, okay? It's only a fraction of a percent. Even better news is that The Sims 4, within a few days, had sold 4 million copies. If you wonder how it's doing now, it recently passed the 30 million copy mark, okay? And I still feel a little tingle inside when I go on Twitch and I see it's like top 10, and it on occasion is. People are still playing that game. But there's some bad news here. What's the bad news when you take these two things and multiply them? Yeah. Yes, okay. If you have a bug that is very rare, but you happen to have a big audience, which you will if you go to one of these larger game studios, do the multiplication here, and you've got 4,000 instances of this bug showing up, which is more than enough for it to start generating headlines, okay? Even though this happens to not that many players, there were press outlets that were still writing about our game and the unique bugs that it had. And even if the bug is kind of inconsequential, that creates the impression that the game is buggy. People might not want to buy it at that point. It creates the impression that it's buggy probably because the game was kind of buggy, okay? As a lot of our beloved EA releases are, okay? So let's talk about some issues in playtesting, okay? I've got a scenario for you, right? You are running a game team. You've got a game team, you're building a game, and one day a teammate or an employee of yours comes up to you and says, hey, boss, don't worry, don't panic. I was playing the game last night. This game is so good, all right? It's going to sell 1 billion copies. We did a great job. Pat yourself on the back. Are there any issues? How do you feel about this? Someone on your team during P3 comes up and says, hey, we got this one in the bag. I love this game. Does this news excite you? Yes?
Probably in denial.
Probably in denial. Could be, right? You could have a bias toward your own game and its success, okay? You say that you love this game. It is your game. Of course you love it, right? And so this is one of the reasons that playtesting with external groups is so important, okay? You want to eventually get outside of your team. You want to figure out who your target demographic is, and you want to try and figure out whether they're going to like it or not. You have to avoid a very famous issue in psychology. This is an issue that is the butt of this joke right here in the film Dumb and Dumber. Have any of you seen it? This is an issue so famous that writers creating films decide to put it right in there in a very comedic way. So for some context, Jim Carrey's character has traveled in order to meet one of his friends because he's interested in a romantic relationship with her. And he's going to ask the question, and he's going to get a result that isn't so promising. So watch how he reacts. Watch this.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Well, Lloyd, that's difficult to say. We really don't...
Hit me with it. Just give it to me straight. I came a long way just to see you, Mary. Just least you can do is level with me. What are my chances?
Not good.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
All right, she didn't say 0, okay? And that means there's a chance, right? This is a famous psychological phenomena called confirmation bias. It is when you look at a piece of data, but you don't see it with clear eyes. You look at this piece of data and you have something, some outcome, some result, that you really want. And so, in this piece of data, you will see the result that you want, even if it's very unlikely or not really there, okay? I believe this is a very common issue in the scientific community, where you are doing experiments and performing data, and in the back of your mind, you want a certain hypothesis to be true. You want your theory to be proven in the data, and you want it so badly, it's so important to your career, that you will see ghosts where there aren't any, okay? And so here, right, the part of the joke is that Jim Carrey's character says and indicates that he's not going to be vulnerable to confirmation bias. Hey, right, I came a long way, Mary. The least you can do is level with me. Give it to me straight, okay? I have sober eyes right now, and so you can be honest with me. And then he falls completely victim to confirmation bias in the worst way, right? What are my chances? Oh, it's 1 in a million. 1 in a million is basically 0, i.e. there's no chance, okay? This ain't going to work. But he sees what he wants to see in that piece of data, and as a result, he comes away with the wrong conclusion. His impression of reality is now very inaccurate, and that will cause him to make bad decisions. And so too with game designers, okay? When you are doing a playtest, right, you implement a feature, you worked super hard on that new game mechanic, that new feature. You want people to love it. What are you going to be more likely to do or see in the playtest? You work super hard on something new, a new game mechanic on Sunday night. On Monday, you see people come and play the game. What are you going to be biased to notice? Yeah.
The new mechanic that people like.
Exactly. You are going to pay particular attention to the new mechanic, and especially if people seem to be liking it. If, 2 people walk up and really enjoy the new mechanic, but 5 people walk up and really seem to dislike it or get confused by it, guess which playtesters you're going to spend most of your attention on, right? It's going to be very tempting to just focus on those 2 people who had a great time and say, wow, this is a great feature. We should improve it and spend more resources on it, when in reality, the data actually suggests that it wasn't a great feature. Maybe it's not worth investing in further, okay? So you have to be careful, Okay, be careful about confirmation bias, especially when you're running your own playtest. A quick anecdote on The Sims 4, when The Sims 4 had a new build ready to go and we wanted to get playtesting done, we, the dev team, did not run those playtests. You know what we did? We would hand our build off to an internal EA playtesting team, okay, a centralized team that didn't have any team members from the actual Sims game on it, okay? We did that so that we would have kind of a neutral third party to go out and get us the cleanest data and the best interpretation of that data that we could, okay? To try and avoid issues of bias like that. Okay, another interesting issue is those of your target demographic. In this 2017 Sales Demographic and Usage Data Guide, the ESA, which is kind of an industry lobbying group, a lot of different big studios participate and contribute to the ESA to do research, to do lobbying, political stuff for the industry. They sent out surveys, they did a bunch of data collection, and they discovered that in the US, 41% of gamers are now female. And that was quite a long time ago, so that has probably changed even more. What might also shock you is that the average gamer, the average person who plays game, is getting older, now 35 years old. When I was growing up, gaming was something that was seen as very much kind of a toy for children, okay? But these days, you've got a lot of people who are playing games on their computer, games on consoles. You've got a ton of older people who play games like Candy Crush on their mobile phone, okay? And so the market for games is changing. The people who play games is changing. And so one thing you can do is when you're doing playtests, you can get your game in front of as many different kinds of people as you can. Now, this isn't to say that you need to make your game for everyone, or that you even should try to do that. Teams that try and make a game that appeals to everyone often end up with very generic slop, and we have a lot of studios right now that are kind of running into that problem, where their games just don't stand out. They are very, they're very safe games. But you never know who your game is going to appeal to. You can have a target demographic in mind only to discover that there's actually another niche audience that really resonates with what you're doing. And you can then make informed decisions about who you want to target for your game, and you can make a great game for them. The number one rule of business is know your customer, okay? And that translates to game dev in, hey, know who you're making your game for. Know what appeals to them. Play other games in that genre. Understand your customer, and you will be in good shape, okay? I want to talk to you about the different types of playtesters you can have, okay? And the first playtester you are ever going to have is yourself. Okay, you have already playtested with yourself very often in this course. When you write a bit of code and you wonder, hey, is this even going to compile, right? Is this even going to do what I hoped it was going to do? What do? You then click that play button in Unity and you see the results. You go and you run around and, oh yeah, my sword mechanic now works, right? It might not be very good. It might only work half the time, but I press the button and the sword pops out of Link, okay? This is playtesting that is very good for a few reasons and also very bad for a few reasons. What is very nice about playtesting exclusively with yourself? And this is something that most beginner game developers do way too much, right? They're always playtesting with themselves. What is really good about this? What are the positives? Yes?
It's easy.
It's easy. It is super, super easy. It's super fast, right? How many people do you need to talk to? How many schedules do you have to align to make a playtest happen with yourself? Nothing, right? You can just click the play button and you're already playtesting. Super cheap, super nice. You don't have to send your game to anyone, okay? But there are some downsides, okay? If you were to only ever playtest with yourself, what's going to happen to your game over time? Any ideas? Yes. Yeah. You might love your game. After all, you've been playtesting and improving your game based on only your feedback. But you aren't going to be one of your customers, okay? You probably, unless you're George Lucas and you're just chilling with money and just making films for yourself all day, you are probably not your target audience, okay? And you have confirmation bias, all right? Even people like you who are similar to you might not end up liking the game to the same extent because, hey, you made this game, it's your baby, so you're probably going to like it, right? And so if we want to keep our playtesting cheap and fast and efficient, but we want things to be a little bit less biased, a little bit more useful, what is the next group of people that we can playtest with? When you are working on your P3 and you've confirmed, hey, something works, you've done playtesting with yourself, what's the next person or group of people you think to playtest with or tell people about that new feature? Yes?
Project partners.
Your team. That's right, your project partners, okay? This is the next step up this playtesting ladder. And it's a good step to take. Why? It is still relatively cheap and very fast to do this. Now, it's more expensive. You have to, number one, you have to message your team members to tell them there's something you want them to play test. That takes a bit of time. You then have to tell them to pull those changes, or you have to make a build to send to them, all right? And your team members might not be available at that moment. They might be eating, they might be working on their own stuff. So it might take half an hour or an hour maybe for one of them to be available to do this playtest. So the cost has gone up, but in return for that increased cost, what do you get? What's the upside? Why do we do this? Yeah.
It's like less confirmation bias than what we're.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Now, there's still some confirmation bias because you are heavily incentivized to see the things your team does as awesome, okay? It's no fun to be on a team where your teammates are just creating garbage features all day, okay? So you have a strong emotional incentive to say, oh, my teammate made something, it's great, okay? But it's not as strong as you made that thing, okay? You will find really good team members who are comfortable telling you, hey, this just ain't it, chief, right? This is not there yet, okay? That's how you know you've got a good friend, by the way, when they tell you, hey, like, what are you doing, okay? Like we need to get you patched up. We got to get you fixed up, okay? But this is a good step, okay? And you have multiple people on that team, so you're going to get more diverse data as well. You'll get a little bit more of a broader perspective. But after your team has been exhausted, when you say to yourself, I really care about this confirmation bias thing, okay? I want to make sure we're not being biased to like our own game. So who are you going to go to next? And I'll give you a hint, like you've probably already done this. I think you did this on P1 or P2, okay? Yes?
Friends, family.
Friends and family. Sometimes it's called friends, family, and fools, okay? Because they are still biased to give you things you want to hear. But friends and family are the logical next step, okay? When you want to get outside of the team, when you want to get out of people who've made and worked on the game, okay, who have a stake in it, friends and family is another good approach. You have good relationships with your friends and family, hopefully, and as a result, you can make a build, send it to them, and you can expect to at least hear something from them within a couple days, okay? So things have gotten a little bit more expensive still because maybe it takes a while to respond. Maybe your friends and family just aren't gamers or they don't have the controller that they need to play the game, okay? So it's gotten a bit more expensive, but it's also gotten a bit more impartial, all right? But this is still an issue, okay? If you send your best friend a terrible build, of what is already a poorly designed game, okay? Do you think they're going to tell you to your face, Austin, this is the worst thing I've played all year. This is the worst thing I've played in a decade. Okay? I hated it top to bottom. Nothing about it makes sense. Scrap the whole thing. Start fresh. How many of you have a friend who you think would actually say that to you? Yeah, it's good friends, right? Most friends, right, they value the relationship that they have with you, and they're going to be a little bit nervous about possibly damaging it, even if that forces them to not tell the whole truth, okay? And so, friends and family still has a certain amount of bias. Now, I'll give you a technique to try and get around this. Sometimes you can tell your friends that, hey, my friend actually made this game. And, we're looking for playtesters, and we just want to know how you feel, It's not my game. I didn't work on this. Let me know how you feel. Now, the risk here is that, if you didn't work on it, your friend might not be as incentivized to play it. It might raise the cost. It'll take them longer to play it. But there's a good chance that they'll tell you, oh man, like this stinks. This is totally terrible, right? And your heart kind of dies as they're saying this to you, right? But friends and family is the next logical step, okay? And you can see as we go up this little pyramid, the cost to run these playtests is going up pretty quickly. But the impartiality, the value of the data coming out of the playtest is improving, okay? And so next, we do what we did on Monday, what we did during P2, what we're going to be doing every Monday, all right? We playtest with our local area, our local groups, okay? I like all of you, okay, quite a bit. And I think you all like each other, or at least you have a bit of familiarity with each other, okay? But many of you are probably not friends with each other, okay? Like deep, long friends, okay? And so chances are, if your game in here is not working well during a playtest, chances are you're going to get some pretty honest feedback from the people doing this playtest, okay? Local area. We used to have students who would make a build of their game, and they would actually grab a table in the middle of the Beister building, or in the middle of the Duderstadt Center, or even at their own dormitory. And as people walk by, they would just say, hey, you got 5 minutes to play a game and let me know what you think, right? And it worked. It worked very well. If the player didn't know what was going on, right, that would be obvious. If the player wasn't having fun, they would say it. But even here, even during a playtest, even when you don't know the other person, are you going to walk up and play a game and you really don't like it? Are you going to say to that person who's worked so hard on the game, this is awful, scrap the whole thing? Are you going to say that to their face? Even if it's true, would you say it? I think the answer for most of us in here is the answer is still no. Okay? There's still a little bit of bias that creeps in. There's still a little bit of something that keeps us from delivering the truth. Okay? And that's because we generally don't walk up to someone's face and tell them they look like shit today, even if that's true. Okay? It's not something that you typically do when you're in a polite mood. All right? And so that's an issue. All right? This is more expensive still because now you have transit involved. Now you have hardware involved. You can't just go to your local dormitory and expect there to be computers set up for you right there. No, you have to bring a laptop. You might have to wheel a table over. You might have to find a power outlet nearby. It's a big pain in the butt, all right? But you do get really good feedback when you do it. This is the best mixture, in my opinion, of quality feedback versus cost, okay? You can come to a lab like this, or you can go to the monthly IGDA meetup, which is next week, and you can bring your game. It's not super high cost. You'll get pretty good feedback, and you're set up in a good position. All right. Now, what is the final frontier? One day, your game has to go out there onto the internet. It has to go out there onto public marketplaces, and it has to sell. It has to compete with anything else out there, and it has to deal with strangers who won't see you face to face. What is the final playtesting group? What am I describing? This is the scariest one. This is the one you have to dump a ton of resources into because you have to get this right. Yes? Customers, yes. But those customers are where?
Internet.
The internet. Oh my God. Uh-oh. All right. So, when you put something out onto the internet, there will be no mercy. Okay? There will be no hiding. Okay? When you send your game onto the internet, does the download include you? When someone in Norway downloads your game from Steam or itch.io, do they get a copy of you so you can stand there and help them through the game, help explain the context of the game? You can explain to them, oh, I know the game isn't very good, but I made it. I only had 6 weeks and we're students. And none of us were artists on the team. We didn't take 298, okay? So you have to be merciful to us, right? No, that doesn't happen. No one cares about the context of the game for the most part, all right? They're going to get your game, and if it is not to their liking, they will bash it, and they will have fun making fun of it and making fun of you, okay? Very, very scary. The Wild West out there, okay? But that is eventually where all games end up, all right? No matter how much playtesting you do, no matter who you do it with, eventually your game will be forced to enter the final frontier here. So you are either going to be forced there against your will, all right, in a very unpleasant way, or you can work your way up to it, to the point where, yeah, in general, people, strangers on the internet, play the game, they have a good time, all right? So the internet, the most expensive and scariest place to deploy your game for playtesting. This is also where you will get the authentic experience, all right? And this is eventually where all the markets are, and so this is where you will end up when you go onto Steam or itch.io. There's no avoiding it, okay? And so, yeah, that is the general progression. A few notes. Some game teams really mess this up in a very bad way, okay? One way to mess this up is that you just spend so much time playing with yourself. You spend years just working on, giggles across the room. You spend years just playtesting only with yourself, and then you deploy it to the internet. You release it, you run out of time, you run out of money. You skip these intermediate stages, and the internet has a field day with your weird, incestuous, strange game, okay, that took no feedback from anyone but yourself, okay, and thus has just wild and weird decisions and probably isn't very polished, probably isn't very fun. What I will say is that the games that stick down here and then make the leap, okay, they tend to be the strangest games that you will play. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It often is, but a game like Death Stranding, okay? Death Stranding, I'm sure, had some playtesting, but I'm willing to bet it didn't have quite as much as a typical game does. A game like Death Stranding is going straight out of Kojima's mind onto the internet with perhaps not a whole lot in between, okay? You get a really unique game that nevertheless a lot of people did not like at all, okay? I'm super glad it exists, and I'm glad this happens on occasion, but it's very strange, okay? Likewise, though, if you spend too much time playtesting at this half of the chart, you can end up with a game that has been optimized to appeal to everyone, okay? No one despises your game, but also it's nothing to write home about, okay? It doesn't push any buttons. It doesn't try anything weird or funky or high friction. And as a result, it's just not very memorable, okay? It just blends in. So you want to be very careful, and you want to think about how often you're playtesting and with who. And you want to be very purposeful with the choices that you make, okay? There are some other types of playtesters that are very interesting. If you go to a big professional studio, there's a very good chance that they have professional playtesters. They have professional Q&A. Now, they might have embedded Q&A, which is super cool. This is when you've got your desk right here as a programmer, a gameplay programmer in your case, and right behind you is a Q&A person. Once you're done working on something, you can go to that Q&A person and say, hey, Rodrigo, right? I just finished this new system for waiting lines. And I just pushed it to this branch. Like, if you have some time, will you poke and prod it and see if you can break it? And then, I remember it. I went to lunch, and I came back. And an hour later, my embedded Q&A friend had broken my system in 3 different ways. And what's more, he didn't just break it. He also documented how he was able to do it with reproducible steps. So a good Q&A person, right, can very help you identify problems in your game. But more than that, they can also suggest to you how to fix them. They can produce footage and data that makes that process much faster. So good Q&A can make you dramatically more efficient, okay? Sometimes they're not embedded Q&A. A company like EA will have a build, okay? And they will send that build out to an external team in Iowa or maybe Thailand or whatever. And that external team will play the game and will generate a ton of bug reports and issue recommendations and stuff like that, okay? One of the coolest things about having a publisher on the other side of the planet, which for my last indie game I had a publisher in Warsaw in Eastern Europe, was that I would work on the game during the day, and then as I was going to sleep, I would push my changes. I would send the new build to the publisher. The publisher is just waking up as I'm going to sleep. And so they would play the game, and they would generate bug reports, and they would issue recommendations. And then I would wake up, and I would have this big report on all the features that I just made and all the problems with them and how I might go about solving them. And so it was just a very nice cadence for that. The final type that I want to talk about is the tissue playtester. So a tissue, right? You use it and you never use it again. You don't want to reuse a tissue, right? It already has a bunch of snot, a bunch of weird, strange juices all over it, whatever. And you don't want to use that again, all right? Use it once, throw it away. And so a tissue playtester is the idea that any given playtester can only have a first impression of your game once, okay? As we play each other's games every Monday in this class, we lose that property. We lose the ability to help devs understand what that first impression is going to be, okay? We become biased. We already understand each other's games. We've played it a few times, right? At the showcase, most of the people there will be playing your game for the very first time. And so as as the weeks go on, your peers in this class become less predictive. They become a little bit biased, and it becomes a bit harder to understand what that first impression is going to be, okay? The story I like to tell is actually a story from my mentor, Jeremy Bond. He was roommates at USC with a guy named Genova Chen. Does that name mean anything to anyone? Have you ever heard of a game company called That Game Company? They made a game called Flow and Flower. They made a game called Destiny, right? Or no, Journey. Journey. They made a game called Journey, okay? It's this game. Nope. Yeah, I misspelled it. Here you go. Have you seen this game? Right? No? Okay, it was a very, very big game a decade ago. This game is a very artistic game. It's very nuanced, very subtle, and very emotion-packed. And Genova was making this game, and Jeremy Bond was roommates with him. Jeremy wanted to play test the game. He heard it was really cool, wanted to check it out. But Genova wouldn't let his roommate play test the game. Why? Well, Genova wanted to get his game a bit more finished. He wanted to get all the emotional moments and cutscenes in the game. And only at that last moment, when the emotion was in, did he want to get Jeremy's first impression of the game. because he really valued Jeremy's feedback and he wanted to keep him fresh. Okay, he didn't want to deploy him or use him as a playtester in the early stages. Okay, and so just keep that in mind when you ask someone to playtest your game. They are biased in some way from then on out. You cannot reuse them in the same fashion again. Okay, so the first impression is super important. It is how most players and customers will experience your game. But if you keep playtesting with the same people, it's going to be a little bit biased. Okay, it's going to become less and less representative of that first impression as time goes on. Okay, and so just keep that in mind. All right. I want to take our 5-minute break, and then I want to come back, and this is my favorite part of the talk. I want to show you some extremely cool playtesting tech. Okay, we are computer scientists, and so we can use technology and software to make our playtesting, our automation, our Q&A dramatically more efficient and more effective. I'm going to show you that in 5 minutes. See you then.
And then you have like stations on the outside. Solid. But like, but chalks with some sort of shape. I think this is the one. I don't know. Are you serious? Right. How did you get that? I think
Ah. Okay, let's go ahead and get back to it. A quick fun thing. Implementing multiple characters in this game was actually really, really easy to do. And switching between them is almost trivial. You know why? Because all of these characters, every single character in this game, and we'll be adding more, are all just costumes on top of a pill character. Okay? I can switch on a debug mode. I've forgotten how to do it. There's a cheat code in here somewhere. But it's just a pill. Okay, it's just a capsule jumping around. What we do is the same thing I showed you how to do in the juice lecture, where basically you make your actual character, your actual game object invisible, and you spawn in a view or a costume game object to follow that first one around. So I can be playing as Peach or I can play as Prince Random, and the collisions, the physics, the way everything moves, the way things interact are all the same, okay? And the characters you see, they're just views, they're just costumes, okay? As a result, I can program the game with regard to that capsule, that pill character, which makes the programming very simple. And I can make the game look nicer by just changing how the characters animate, how they respond to moving around, and I can customize them how I want. For instance, Peach's view and character has hair physics. And so her view is customized in a different way than Prince Random's is. But the fact that Peach has hair physics doesn't actually affect the platforming at all. It's just a visual thing, okay? Hair and dress physics as well. The springiness, okay? Really surprisingly easy to make that happen, and it makes the game look dramatically better, okay? I want to make a Prince Random's little hat or little rooster hair thing physicsy too. But actually, his hair is just in the animation itself. Evan just animated what that rooster thing does. So anyway, yeah, kind of cool, huh? All right. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's talk about some playtesting tech. All right. How many of you played this game? Obscure little indie game called Overwatch. Okay. I just had lunch with one of my students yesterday, and she's going to work on Overwatch 2, and she's moving out to California. So this is footage of someone playing Overwatch 1, playing a match, but they're wearing a special set of glasses. They're wearing glasses that look like this. These glasses are very unique because they have one camera facing outward, and they have two cameras that are actually pointed, one at each pupil. And so the idea here is that these glasses show us where the players is looking, where their pupils are looking, because they do a little bit of math and trigonometry based on your pupil shape to figure out where on screen you're looking. As a result, you can have a window into the player's mind. If you wonder what is the player thinking about at this moment, all you need to know, where are their eyes looking? So watch this footage, and I want you to pay attention to little patterns you see. the player doing with their eyes? Okay, watch this. At first, they're going to do some calibration stuff. They're going to look at the screen and then look at some other stuff and, blah, blah, blah. But as the match is starting, as the match begins, you're going to see them do interesting stuff. Watch this. Watch this. 3, 2, 1. What are they doing right now? Right now. Then they're in gameplay. They're in the game, right? What are they doing? Where are their eyes? What part of the screen do they care about? Okay, they're scanning the horizon, looking for enemy, looking for enemy, looking for enemy. Enemy spotted. Boom, lock onto the enemy, take them out. Okay, enemy defeated. Okay, corner, corner. Enemy, lock on. Okay. Enemy defeated, corner, corner. Did you see it? So if you are in the School of Information, or you're an artist, or you're a UI designer, a UX designer, this question of, does the player have all the information they need? Can they easily look at it on the screen and find it, okay? Can they find it very quickly, right? Corner, corner, right? Is a very, very important thing. So I love this moment at the beginning when they're just about to start the match. What does the player do? The player brings up their team, and they're looking at their team composition. They're looking at which characters all my teammates showed. Does anyone play Overwatch? Anyone play Overwatch? Okay, tell me this. Okay, is this player freaking out right now or not? Are they happy or sad about their team composition? I've heard that some people will look at the team, the characters their team members choose, and they'll just quit the game right there. Okay, like, oh my gosh, everyone's a healer. We're in trouble. Okay. But it's really funny. You can see the player's eyes going from person to person thinking, oh no, okay? While they're during normal gameplay, they're kind of scanning the horizon and looking for opponents. But after they have dealt with an opponent, right? After this opponent's defeated, you see their eyes go bottom right, bottom left, and then back to scanning the horizon. Why are they doing this? What is going through the player's mind when they're moving their eyes to these corners? Why would they do this? Yes? Yeah. Yeah. As soon as they're done with a fight, they look away from their opponent because they're dead now. They don't matter anymore. And they look at their cooldowns, and then they look at their health and ammo in the other corner. Why would you do this right after a fight? What's the value here? Bingo! You need to make a decision. You need to decide, should I go looking for another fight? Or if I'm low on ammo, if I'm low on health, if my cooldowns aren't ready, maybe I should start avoiding fights and I should go search for some ammo pickups or some health pickups instead. Okay? So you see, with tools like this, we get a lot more data. We get a much better window into what players care about and what players pay attention to. How many of you are making what you would describe as a puzzle game for P3? Okay? In my opinion, every game out there is to some extent a puzzle game. But how useful would it be if you're putting little hints into the environment? How useful would it be to know if the player's looking at them, if the player's noticing them? What part of your hint on the wall is the player focusing on the most? If they're focusing on the wrong thing, maybe we need to change our art assets. We need to make something a bit more prominent. We need to bold a certain part of the hint, right? And that's the information you suddenly have if you use technology like this. Now, this actually comes from a German company, I think, a European company. I want to go on. Thanks. Okay. I know this because, right, it's in euros. Right, this is going to come out to, I think, like $1,800, so almost $2,000 if you want a device that's going to do this. Okay, if I ever get more of a budget for this course, maybe it'd be really fun to get a few and pass them around during playtests. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. If you're ever doing web dev, here's another super useful tool. Okay, this is one called browsershots.org. If you're making a web game or your portfolio website and you wonder, does my website run in Firefox? Does my website run in the Lynx 2.8 web browser? How many of you use that one? No? Well, I'll tell you, I discovered that my website runs on most browsers, but it doesn't run on that one. Okay? If you go to aarger.com on the Lynx 2.8 browser on Windows 7, my website doesn't work. Okay? And that's kind of good to know. If this was a more important browser, I would rush out to go fix that, figure out the problem. Okay? How many of you have heard of a browser called Dillo? Dillo is a bit more popular in the Linux community. It is a web browser that's very minimalistic. It will not render the fancy modern elements such as the HTML5 canvas. Okay? And so this is what my aarger.com website looks like if you visit it in the Dillo web browser. And if you don't like this fact, there are things you can do to change that, to make it look nicer. You can rework your website a bit, okay? But this is also confirmation that on monitors that are big and tall, on phone-style monitors, on traditional 4x3 desktop monitors, my website works well and looks good, okay? That's not super relevant to game dev unless you're making a web game, but this absolutely is, all right? Amazon Device Farm is a really, really cool service that allows you to temporarily rent any device you want. From the latest iPhones to the latest Samsung Galaxy tablets to OnePlus or Huawei devices. If you have an app you're making and you want to verify that it runs on everything and doesn't crash, and it works in every aspect ratio, no matter what kind of weird screen your device has, Amazon Device Farm will allow you to do this, okay? Here is a game that it's actually the first commercial game that my company, Arbor Interactive, made. It was a game that we made for a health insurance company, okay? It was a game that was like a mental health clinic, and I'm still fond of it. It was kind of a fun game. It worked well. I think it actually looked all right. For a game that I did all the art in, it looked a little bit stylish and didn't look completely terrible. But I wanted to know if this game would run and work well on a Samsung Galaxy tablet. The problem was I didn't own a Samsung Galaxy tablet. Those things are like $400, $500. I don't want to pay that amount of money just to test my game, because then I have to go test it on another device and another. I have to buy all these devices, and there are new devices coming out every year. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to pay for all that. Well, instead what you do is you go to Amazon Device Farm, you upload your game files, and it gets automatically installed for you on any device of your choosing, and it will actually play through your game, and it will take screenshots, it will take logs, it will take data, okay? It will show you the RAM and CPU usage. If you've got tests, unit tests, it can run those for you and tell you if you passed those. A question for you, how does it play through your game? Does it use some super AI that's able to play any modern game? Yes?
Is it like MTurk for like hiring a person to go and play your game?
We'll talk about MTurk in just a bit, but no, it doesn't do that. You know what it does? It randomly spams presses and taps on your screen, okay? And that's how it plays through the game. And shockingly, this works very well, because eventually, kind of like, do you remember the Pokemon plays or the, what was it? Like half a decade ago, there was an interesting, it's Twitch plays. Yeah, Twitch chat plays Pokemon, right? And they're just spamming, text, and everyone's trying to get through the game of Pokemon. Eventually, it gets through, okay? And it progresses through the game. What's really interesting is that most players don't test this way. And so most players don't play this way, and most developers don't test by just randomly tapping things. So this is a surprisingly good approach for flushing out rare bugs, okay? Because it's truly random. Amazon Device Farm will pressure your software in ways that most humans will not, Okay, so you can find a lot of rare and difficult to find bugs that way. Here's a game called Bunches of Lunches. This was like our third or fourth commercial game we made. And this was a game that was our match 3 game, okay? This is how it was supposed to look. You kind of drive around and look at this nice parallax in the background, right? We have all these layers that allow us to make it look like there's a sense of depth deep in the background. I also want to point out, you can't tell in a GIF, but these trees will dance to the beat of the music. So anyway, kind of a subtle thing. But this is the way it looks on my actual computer and on my phone. But when I deployed this game to the Samsung Galaxy Tablet S4, this is how the game looked. Do you see any problems with this? Any issues? Yeah. Yeah, right? Look at this. It's fine if we can't see quite as far on the left or right side of the screen. But in this case, we have important UI buttons that are kind of hanging half off the screen. This isn't the end of the world because this isn't a super fast-paced moment in the game. This is just the stage select. And you can still press this button. It's a little bit tricky, but you can get your finger in there to press it. But you know what's really bad? If a gameplay scene gets chopped like this. Here's how gameplay is supposed to look, okay? And it's really nice. You've got all your rows here. You can just kind of swipe where you want to and try and land things on the tray to make a meal, okay? But on the Galaxy tablet, this is what that looked like, okay? We have an entire column that has basically been cut, okay? It's now much harder to swipe and match things in that final column, okay? This is not really acceptable, okay? And so the reason we discovered this nasty issue, we discovered this horrible issue just a couple days before we were set to launch the game. And so we would have shipped with this horrible issue, and we would have gotten terrible reviews. Players would have hated it. But we found it because of Amazon Device Farm. You know how we fixed this issue? We didn't have time to go back in and really resize all the assets and fix the art. So you know what you can always do? That is, it's kind of cheating. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a very cheap solution. What you can do is you can do what Hollywood films do when they come to DVDs and to Netflix. They introduce bars, okay? This is the bad result. This is a much better result. And all we did is we shifted the aspect ratio to match the phone devices by adding in black bars, okay, on the top and bottom. Most players don't even notice these, okay? It kind of gets lost in the little bevel where the display actually comes alive. But anyway, this fixed the problem, and now the UI looks dramatically better, okay? Another interesting technology for playtesting, I kid you not, this will work, is Amazon Mechanical Turk. Have you ever heard of this service? Okay, a few of you, that's way more than I usually get. This is a service that has a really funny tagline. It is called Amazon Mechanical Turk, tagline, artificial intelligence. Okay? As in, this is fake AI. Here is how it works. You might have a task that you really wish you could do, okay? But you don't have the time for it. For instance, please provide 3 tags, 3 words that describe this image. Why would you want to collect that kind of data? For machine learning, okay? You need a training set and then a test set to evolve and evaluate your machine learning models, your LLMs possibly, okay? And you have like 500 of these that you want to do. You don't have time for that, okay? So what are you going to do? Well, AI, at least in that era, AI could not do this, okay? Our technology wasn't good enough. Our computer vision wasn't good enough. So you know what we do? You create a task like this in Amazon Mechanical Turk, and then Mechanical Turk will give this task to a bunch of humans who are bored at work. Okay, I kid you not. The people who do Amazon Mechanical Turk tasks are usually people who are sitting around at work and have nothing else to do. They find it fun. Okay? You decide how much you want to pay for every one of these that is completed. Most people pay out like 5 cents per one of these that is complete. And so if you're bored at work, yeah, sure, I don't know. Let's have some fun. I'll do some tasks and I'll get a few cents, right? At the end of the day, I've got a few bucks and, that's it. Not a good way to make money. I do not recommend using this unless you're super bored. But it is actually a shockingly good way to be like, hey, follow this link and play my web build of my game. And then after you've played it for like 2 minutes, let me know, like type up a quick response. Let me know if it was confusing. Another thing I've used it on in the past is like, hey, here's a character design. Here's like an image, a few images for a character, right? Look at this character and then quickly write up like, do you like them? Would you play a game with them, right? And then you're done and I give you like 30 cents for that, right? Just a minute or two of work. And, let me know what you think, okay? And it works. And, like 30 minutes later, you've got 30 people who have weighed in on your character design. And these are people who are completely random, completely anonymous, okay? And it's a pretty good way of saying like, hey, does this thing resonate with the general masses, right? So a really interesting bit of tech that most people don't talk about, but it's actually shockingly cool. But again, don't please try and give people something that's worth their time. Please pay out and reward their time. And if you're a user, do not rely on this to make an income, okay? This is one of the coolest pieces of tech I've ever built for playtesting. This is an automated playtesting system with a live stream built into it, okay? You've probably seen this beach game before. It was a game I was working on for a while. Well, I eventually got our technology to the point where an AI could play through parts of the game. I wrote an AI. It would basically emit events with the pub/sub design pattern. It would emit certain events to get through the character select screen, to get through stage select, to get into the gameplay, to tell characters to walk to certain locations, stuff like that. And what would happen is I would make a push on Git. I had a Jenkins server running on a Mac Mini in my office, and that Jenkins server would detect that the push had completed. It would clone down the repository. It would then use some terminal commands to tell Unity to do a build of the game, a Mac build. Once the build was finished, it would then launch the game in autoplay mode. And it would also at the same time launch OBS to live stream that window. And so what would happen is I would work on the game for an hour and then I'd say, hey, I'm done for the day. I push my changes and then I walk over to make a sandwich, make dinner or something. Now, 30 minutes later, I would have dinner finished. I'd be eating dinner. I would take out my phone and I would open up the YouTube app and go to my channel for my company. And my company channel would be live streaming the AI player trying to get through the game. And I would be able to see, like, oh, has anything gone wrong, right? Are there any issues? Did my player manage to beat this set of levels? And if the answer is no, that meant I probably broke something, okay? On occasion, what I would discover is that my AI player would play the game and would discover that at exactly 3 hours and 26 minutes after launching the game, we would get this bug right here. See it? This bug, where all of my AI pathfinding has broken. No units are able to walk around and figure out how to navigate through this stage, nor are they able to take any damage. Okay? That is the kind of bug that shatters and ruins a game. It's the kind of bug that's also hard to discover How many of you play test your own P3 project all the time, right? But how many of you are going to play test it to hour 3? How many of you are going to find the bug that happens in hour 3 of gameplay? None of you. That's how many. All right? On The Sims 4, we had to find these bugs because people will play The Sims 4 for 10 hours straight. Like they'll play Civilization series for 10 hours straight. But as a developer, you do not want to test your game for 10 hours straight. So what did we do on The Sims 4? We had a program that you would basically work all day, and then you'd launch The Sims 4, and you would click on this little cheat code button that would say soak test. That soak test button would enable an autoplay feature where The Sims would just play for you, and it would enable a bunch of detailed logging. At that point, you turn off your monitor, you don't turn your computer off, and you go home. And you rest, and you eat, and you come in the next day for work. You turn on your monitor, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I turned on my monitor. My house had been burned down. All of my Sims had been fired. Half of them were dead. And the ones who were still alive were laying outside in the grass in a pool of their own piss. And I thought, wow, that didn't go so well, right? And I would look at the logs, and it would just be a sea of red ink, okay? At a certain point, a bug would occur, and that bug would cascade and cause other bugs to occur, and eventually the game would get to a state where the Sims couldn't keep going, right? And things would just collapse for them. And what you do is you then work backward from the logs to try and figure out what error was occurring and how you can kind of fix things up, right? So this was a way to soak our game for a while and find a bunch of bugs that would otherwise be very difficult to discover, okay? A soak test. And this kind of tech is super good for that because it allows you to check in on your soak test and watch things as they devolve, okay? And then makes it easier to go back and fix those issues in the future, all right? So pretty interesting stuff. I also have another piece of really cool Sims, not Sims technology, but I created some technology for that beach tower defense game that was capable of recording user inputs while they played. So our users at a playtest would play through the game, and every time they clicked, every time they moved the mouse, every time they touch an arrow key or a button press on a controller, it would log this fact. On frame 4,264, the user clicked the left mouse button. Well, why is that important? Well, if your game is deterministic, then you can download that file and you can replay it into your game. So here is replaying a user input recording to review a certain player's session. In this footage, you're going to see two mice. This is the cursor that's my actual cursor. And this is the cursor that's the recorded player's cursor, the big one. And every time they click, the cursor is going to turn red, okay? And you can watch them play through the game. You can watch them interact with and navigate menus. You can watch them click and drag the screen to like move the camera around, okay? And so if a user runs into a bug, I don't have to ask them, what were you doing that caused this, okay? I can just download their session and watch them mess things up, okay? If you're in the EECS 498 course, these characters look familiar. Game engine architecture. Okay, click on some sort of story mode, okay? Click on a character, right? And I can watch. I could watch as a user got confused about the UI. So they're clicking around, right? And now they're going to go over and click on and hover over the character select. This is another instance where the footage is not very good because the characters are bouncing up and down to the music right now. Okay, this is the awful stage select grid. Okay. All right, come on. Click the play button. Go to the gameplay, please. Okay. Okay, cutscene. Watch them spam through the cutscene. The work in progress cutscene. Okay, hello. Hello. Okay, cool. And so now we get to watch the player and watch them interact with stuff. The UI was so bad at this point. I made it much better right after that. But okay, anyway, right, you get a feel for how powerful that is. There are also lots of data visualization tools you can use in Unity, actually, to like track how many people are playing your game, how many people are getting to a certain location in the game, a certain stage, whatever. And yeah, so a lot going on. Now, all this technology, all this data, this playtesting stuff, all right? All of this is really valuable, but you have to be careful, because the question for you now is, can Q&A go wrong? Can the data lead you astray? And the answer is yes. I have one final story for you that I think you'll find enjoyable. How many of you have ever played or heard of a game called Jak and Daxter? Okay. This is this game series that Naughty Dog worked on after they finished Crash Bandicoot, which is the first game series I ever played. That was the game of my childhood, Crash Bandicoot. Okay? Rich Hilleman was telling us this story. He's the former chief creative officer at Electronic Arts. And he was telling us this story about Jak and Daxter and its development. Okay? And this is the game, if you have never seen it. This is a 3D platforming game. And in this game, the team had some data collection from playtests. When you would run around the game and when you would die, the game would compile kind of a heat map. And so this heat map allowed the designers to understand where's the difficulty in our game, where are the difficulty spikes, where are players dying, okay? And what they discovered was that early on in the game, there's a jump you have to make. And this is one of the first jumps in the game where you will die if you fail that jump, okay? Now, it wasn't a hard jump, okay? The designers thought everyone would make it. But if you mess the jump up, then you would perish. Now, what was really weird was that they discovered this jump was killing tons of people. This jump early on in the game was just demolishing players. They would die like 15 times straight on this jump, okay? It was just blood red in the heat map. And they thought, oh my God, what's going on here? We're not teaching our players effectively enough, right? Our guidance is bad. Players don't know how to jump, so they keep dying. Or maybe this jump is just way too hard for this early in the game. We don't want all of this destruction and carnage happening this early. We want the difficulty to come toward the end of the game, not the start. That's what the data suggested. But you know what was actually happening? The data led them astray, because what was actually happening is that most people didn't have any problem with the jump. But if you died on this jump, and a few people would, what happens when you die in Jak and Daxter? For those of you who have played it, what happens when you get killed? When you get killed in Jak and Daxter, you get a funny cutscene with your sidekick character. And what would happen is that once you got killed once, every player would throw themselves off the bridge 10 times in a row to watch all the other death cutscenes. And that skewed the data. Okay? And here's what those look like.
They'll say something really teary at the funeral, like, "How am I gonna get shaved back now? That looks like it hurt. Should I call for backup? I'm like, stretcher? Yuck. I think."
Right? And so this caused the data to suggest something that was not true. Okay? And so when you are dealing with all of this, you have to be very careful. All right? The data will sometimes lead you astray. And if your gut as a designer still matters, your designer's intuition. And so when the data doesn't match up with what you suggest or believe will happen, what you expect, dig deeper. Don't just blindly trust the data. A lot of people do that these days, just blindly trust the numbers. The numbers don't lie, right? Well, the numbers don't lie, but you have to be very careful to fully understand what the numbers capture, because you can accidentally misinterpret them and that will be not to your advantage. So we've only got 9 minutes left, so we won't get to the teamwork and politics lecture today. We'll get that next Wednesday, next week. But some quick tips and tricks for you, okay? One thing you can do sometimes to make a playtest more authentic with very low cost is you get someone to walk up and playtest your game. Before they start playing, you say, okay, this game was actually made by my friend, okay? And I'm just helping them playtest the game. If you let them know that, right, there's a very good chance they will be more honest in that face-to-face feedback, okay? After all, I can say the game is absolute garbage if I feel that way because I'm not going to, make you angry, right? It's your friend who made the game, not you, right? And of course, your heart dies inside when they give you that feedback, but at least you know the truth now. Okay, here's a really great one, and this is one that I use all the time. When people play test my games, I tell them, hey, please ask me questions and tell me what's on your mind as often as you can. But I can't answer any of your questions, okay? And I won't speak up, all right? Questions and the kind of questions that someone asks will give you a lot of insight into what's going wrong for them and what they're thinking about and what they care about. Whenever I design a new course, one of the things I'm looking most closely on is what questions are being asked on Piazza? What questions are being asked in Discord and at office hours? Why did this student just come into my office hours and ask questions? Did the assignment spec not make it clear enough? If that's the case, I can go back to my assignment spec and I can bold things, I can underline things, I can highlight them, I can rewrite the assignment spec so it's more clear, okay? And over time, that stuff really helps you iterate. Eventually, people just stop asking the question. Why? Because they know the answer, because your materials are way better than they used to be, all right? That's how it goes. Here's a really good one, okay? People may lie to you. They may be biased with their voice and what they say, but it's much harder for people to disguise the way they feel. It's much harder for them to disguise their mannerisms, okay? They can change what they say, but they usually can't change how they say it. If someone says, hey man, that was awesome. Yeah, this is great. All right, let's go. When is it coming out? Right? The tone of my voice right there, my mannerisms. I was walking around with some energy, right? I'm into it. I'm cracking a smile. What if I do this? Oh yeah, hey man, that was great. When's this coming out? Which one of those two versions of Austin is going to actually buy your game? The first one or the second? Because they both said the same thing. Okay? They both said the same thing. But number one is so obviously more into the game. And so that's something you have to pay attention to, right? People will tell you a lot with just their facial expressions, with just their body language, okay? If you are watching someone play your game and they're constantly looking at their watch, right? And they look kind of bored, right? They're talking with someone else, right? They're barely paying attention. Some of my friends from high school, they would play games, story-driven games with loud music blaring. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you're not very engaged in this game, are you? You're just kind of playing it to burn some time. Yeah, it's true, okay? So, people will tell you a lot, but sometimes they won't tell you those things with their words, okay? Sometimes they'll tell you the exact opposite of what they're feeling with their words because of some sort of bias in the situation or that they have, okay? So just keep this in mind, even during playtests. But also keep in mind that if someone starts your playtest and they already look tired, it's probably not your game that messed them up. They didn't have much sleep last night, okay? So if they seem very lethargic at the end of the session, that's not necessarily your game. It could just be their general state, okay? So be careful. There's a lot of nuance in all of this. Extra Credits, if you ever watch that channel, has a good video on the topic of playtesting that goes into a bunch of additional tips and tricks and all that good stuff, okay? So give them a watch. The people who make Raid Shadow Legends. Plarium is in Kalamazoo. Did you know that? Now, they've got a smaller team there. They actually mainly design new games, but they talked with my course and they talked with IGDA Ann Arbor. And they said basically the same thing. You want to be testing early and you want to be testing often, even when your game is stanky and it's no fun at all. That's the best time to get it in front of people, okay? And it's usually very depressing at that stage because, like, yeah, my unfinished crappy game, I keep putting it in front of people and they keep not liking it. It's a big surprise, right? But the thing is, even a crappy game is going to have these little glimmers of excitement and intrigue. There are going to be some things that people really like and resonate with, even when the game is just not finished at all. And that gives you a very strong hint as to what people are seeing in this game. What should we focus on? What should we lean into? What is the thing that this game can really hang its hat on, right? In this course, and I would say in game dev and creative works in general, you don't want to have a creative work that does many things at an average level of quality. You want to have a work, a piece of art, that does a couple things crazy well, okay? And that's, you could just cut the fat, okay? Cut everything else and focus. And those are the games that tend to do best in this course. And often they do the best in the overall industry as well. So yeah, basically Plarium said, yeah, this is exactly how you do it in industry. Get your game in the hands of players early and often and just watch them play. Don't play for them. You're going to rip your hair out, but you're going to get the best data if you just watch them struggle and you try and figure out why are they struggling. You make some changes, do more play tests, and then things are better, okay? The last thing I'll say is that when you are play testing, remember this. This is not an exact science, and you're never going to be able to please everyone. And even with one particular person, you won't be able to please them 100% of the time, okay? When I was making Greek Tragedy, the best I could generally do was say, hey, this puzzle, like right now, 75% of players need my help. After 10 minutes trying to solve the puzzle, they need my help, okay? Can I get that down to 10%? Okay, so that means 90% of my players are getting through the puzzle, okay? That's amazing. If I can get to that, I'm done with that puzzle, I'm moving on. Because you know why? You will have players, I kid you not, you will have a super important item that they must collect to progress. It'll be sitting on the table, shiny, glimmery, in the middle of the room. There's nothing else in the room to distract them, okay? They just read a note telling them, an NPC character just told them to pick up this item. There's a glowing, flashing arrow sign pointing them at the item. There's a little tooltip, okay, in their UI, a little arrow pointing them toward the item. They walk up to the item, they see the item, they walk past the item. That's going to happen, okay? And you will rip your hair out and probably scream into the void as it happens, right? And the more you try and handhold players, the more you try to force a positive outcome on them, the lower the quality your game is going to be, okay? Guidance is about being elegant. Guidance is about having an invisible hand of the designer, making it more likely that players will succeed and have a good time. But you can't hop in there and play the game for them, okay? Players will not like that. Players have recently been revolting against the kind of Ubisoft style of game design where you just got an icon in your map, you just follow the icon, you press the button, quest complete, right? There is going to be a little bit of a return to the days of Morrowind, where you've gotten a request to deliver this package to this city. You're told nothing else. You don't have any UI pointing you there. You know how you get to the city? You talk to someone and see if they'll give you directions. Oh, you have to walk to this city, and then the final city. Oh, how do I get to the first city? You know what you do? You go look at the signs outside the village. Okay? That's how you figure this out, right? Anyway, okay, so please keep that in mind. You're going to try and optimize your game design so that everyone can have fun and get through it. Don't optimize too hard. Do not become owned by your data. Your data is a tool, okay? Use your design intuition and know that you can't help everyone get through. You can't get your success rates to 100%. You probably don't want to get your success rates to 100%, Okay? People really resonate with struggle when they're playing games, right? Not everyone, not every genre loves this. Not every target demographic loves this. But a little bit of struggle, a little bit of friction, okay? A little bit of spice is really nice. Too much and you ruin the meal. Too little and you're too bland. No one remembers you, no one cares. Just the right enough amount of spice is what you need, okay? And that's why this is game design and not game science, all right? Anyway, everyone, that is all I have for you. Please, good luck with your P3. Don't worry if things are not perfect yet, if your game hasn't quite found its identity. Remember, first 2-3 weeks are all about that. So experiment and see what clicks and what feels good to you and to other people, and push that as hard as you can, okay? I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Yeah, no problem.
We do have. Yeah, no. Oh, I fixed it. I read it.
Styling.
No. It's frosting. Also, I think if we're doing yeah. Oh, you can do more times. The particles like an audio. Well, like audio. Yeah.